Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by King of the Cage, welterweight champion, Ben Egli. Ben, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. Ben, the name of the game is really random. That's where I ask you a random question and you give me the real answer. Some of these questions are custom made just for you, and some of these questions are generic ones that I ask all the people I interview. So, here's the first question. Superpower you'd love to have?
Ooh, there's a lot. I guess I could probably say that over the course of my life, that's probably changed. Now I would say probably superpower would be flying, if I had to say.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, yeah, that one would be hard to nail down. I like all different kinds of movies. I'm big into comedy. I would much rather laugh than be serious, because a lot of my life is already serious with all the tough MMA training I do. Oh, man, that would be hard to say. I guess if you looked at like total views of videos in the past 5 years or so, I would have to say most Will Ferrell comedies would have to be up there. I don't know that I could nail one down particularly. I have a lot of other, favorite movies that are actual films and not just comedy. Any kind of comedy I'll watch over and over and over again.
Favorite color?
I would say in high school, our high school colors were navy and white, so I would have had to say for a long time that blue, especially navy blue, was my favorite color. But because I work out so much and for my job and things like that, I actually prefer black, I would say, which makes me kind of sound a little bit depressed. But a lot of my workout shorts and gear is black.
Hey, Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris, good guys wear black.
Yeah, that's true.
Favorite guilty pleasure?
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I haven't watched too many trashy shows in recent years. Not a big sweets person. I probably, I guess if I really had to say it, is the guilty pleasure would be having a few beers with some friends.
Ben, you picked up a win back on May 27th at King of the Cage Headstrong. You defended the King of the Cage welterweight title for the second time when you defeated Justin Baseman by submission due to a rear naked choke in the first round. Overall, how pleased were you with your performance in the fight?
Oh man, that was a great win. Had a really good photographer, Sam Fagan, taking pictures of that, and he captured, kind of the moment after the victory. And I always tell people that you never really, at least I don't, I never know what I'm going to do when I win. I never know if my reaction's going to be really crazy. I don't know if I'm going to climb on top of the cage, which I've never done. I never really know. But that fight we knew against such a tough veteran. I've watched so much tape on him. He had some really good areas. He's a veteran. He had a lot of fights that went to decision. A lot of those that he won. So I knew that he was a gamer. When you have that experience, you're pretty good at knowing how to set your pace and things like that. Definitely like to strike a little bit more. Saw some fights where he looked really pretty difficult to take down, and I went out there and just. My buddies in my corner and things like that were saying that I was even calmer than normal. I just had this kind of different way about me going out there, and didn't take one. He kicked me a couple times, partially checked both kicks. He threw a couple punches that were about an inch shy from my face as I moved away from him. I caught his kick, took him down. As soon as it hit the ground, was in mount, he gave me his back, and man, when I felt the tap coming, the ref wasn't really in a great position right away, so he did then get in a good position, saw the tap, broke us up, and man, I screamed like a maniac. There's some good pictures that it was a great win. It happened, almost as picture perfectly as possible.
Your stand-up is very underrated. When people think of you, they only think of your grappling, but your stand-up is very good, and a lot of people thought going into this fight, if you were going to win this fight, you could catch him and knock him out. It's possible. He has been knocked out before, and he loves to come forward. He'll throw down with anybody. That's kind of his weakness, but also his strength. that he'll just go after everybody. You know, it's been his downfall a lot that he's willing to take 2 or 3, but to give 1. Like, that's just how he fights. So it was possible that you would catch him with a knockout and finish him that way. But, you know, when people looked at this fight, a lot of people thought, you know, the clear path to victory for you was to get him onto the ground and submit him. So did anything in this fight surprise you?
You know, not surprised, no. It was, you know, I always tell people that as a fighter that you plan for the best, prepare for the worst, and kind of everything in between. And that was really, I mean, that was as cleanly as it could have gone. Like I said, and, you know, and you're correct that people do I think, you know, not much of my striking, and that's when something since day one of starting MMA 9.5 years ago has been such a focus. You know, the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling, the grappling, I train that a ton. I am known for my jiu-jitsu. I do tons of jiu-jitsu. But I've had to work the hardest on striking my whole career because I came into MMA as only a grappler, really. So, you know, I had the tools. I've been working on it. I have the tools to beat most people standing. And I've said over my whole career that my stand-up, you know, as I've grown, you know, with levels of competition, my stand-up has grown. I often think that me being calm and composed on the feet and having good striking does usually set up the ground game. In the Justin Baseman fight, I was going to just go out there and try to be elusive. He likes to kick the front leg a lot, especially with his rear leg without setting it up, but he seems to be effective. So the plan was don't go out there, don't give him any easy kicks. But at the end of the day, it was fun because it was just going to be a fight. So I wasn't trying to avoid anything too much in particular, you know, besides the kicks and things like that. But I just got to go out there. I got to strike if I wanted to. I got to take him down if I wanted to. And I was able to catch his kick and secure the takedown, which immediately led to the win. So that was pretty great.
How did you celebrate the win? Yeah,
so kind of how I always do. You know, I'm very lucky to have such a big fan base. It's slowly grown over the years. I think my first amateur fight, I was so focused about just fighting and winning that, you know, I told people about it. I wasn't, you know, I had a Facebook back then, and this was 2008. I had a Facebook back then, didn't have, you know, Twitter wasn't around, you know, just kind of word of mouth. Hey guys, I'm fighting. Obviously my friends and family were there. I think I had 30 people there for my first fight, very close to where I live, but I'll have, you know, I've had 100 people or more at my recent fights, and they're much farther away than where I live. So I have a good fan following, and you know, people have really been supportive of me, and I'm glad to you know, I'm glad to have those people out there and in my corner, and it's fun to put on a good show. And so really my thing is to be with my friends and family after. So King of the Cage, when they come to Oregon, where I've fought all my fights with them, it's on the coast, beautiful. We call it the coast in Oregon, for those who don't know. We don't call it the beach because you can't really be out there suntanning. It's usually pretty cold and windy, but it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's at a Chinook Winds Casino, great place, great venue. We go to their bar and restaurant and just kind of celebrate and talk about the win. And, you know, it's kind of, I tell people, it's kind of like, for those who haven't been married, it's kind of like your own wedding, because you want to be there, and I want to spend time with each person that took time to come and see me. So the night is usually goes pretty long. Everyone's in a good mood, but I try to make sure that I talk and chat with each person that was there to support me. Then it's really nice because the hotel is attached to the casino. Basically, everybody gets a good night's sleep or goes home to their beach house, and then we get breakfast the next morning, and then everybody goes on about their weekend after that. So it's always it's been a really good time, especially at King of the Cage. Really good weekend.
Your next fight is going to be August 5th at King of the Cage Fractured. I'm hearing that you're fighting Tyson Jeffries, but I'm hoping that you're going to be fighting Desmond Hill. Who are you going to be fighting next? Because on the poster, it doesn't say that you have an opponent. So who are you going to be fighting come August 5th?
Right, I'll be fighting Tyson Jeffries.
Didn't you used to train with him at Rose City FC?
Yep, him, and then, before I fought Justin Baseman, I fought Ryan Walker, so I trained with both of those guys over there. Gracie, they're now Gracie Baja. They've got the most pro fighters in Oregon. And, when I heard, again, that I was fighting someone that I used to train with, I the first kind of thought is, well, bummer. And then right after that, all right, August 5th, we're fighting. So, we do have some training history together, definitely.
Is there anyone you won't fight? Because here's a guy Tyson Jeffries used to train with. You mentioned Ryan Walker used to train with him. You actually roomed with him when you were trying out for season 22 of The Ultimate Fighter. Is there anyone you won't fight at this point?
Well, it's been kind of a learning experience, going back probably 5 or 6 years ago almost. People were trying to get me to fight a buddy of mine named Tommy Leesman. We were both he had a couple pro fights and I was a new pro. We fought in the same amateur organization, but I started training at his gym after I moved up. I finished college, moved back to the Portland area, joined a new gym. It was his gym, so they tried to pair us up several times, and that was an easy, several times. One of us would be like, hey, so-and-so called, they want us to fight. I said no. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. I've been offered, the Ryan fight has been the Ryan Walker fight a couple fights ago, people tried to make that several times. We talked about it, whether via text or in person, and we both declined it. We did end up fighting each other. So a lot of people's opinion on it is, it's just a fight, it's business and things like that. My thing is I would way rather not fight somebody that I had a good relationship with. You can do it. I've done it. I'm about to do it again. But my thing, as I always say, is, there is a lot of people on the planet. I would rather not fight somebody that I know, but at the same time, those guys, Ryan and Tyson, those guys are right where I'm at, so it does make sense to fight those guys. It kind of stinks, but really good fight camp against Ryan. No disrespect on either side. We talked after. Everything's good. So, we're professionals at the end of the day. It doesn't need to be any bad blood, but, it's something you got to get used to, I think.
How would you describe your relationship with Tyson? Was he a friend of yours? Was he a close training partner? Or was he just a guy who trained at the same gym that you trained at one point in time? How would you describe your relationship with him?
Yeah, so the Rose City thing, that was great. This is kind of interesting. So Rose City had the idea, which was a great idea. Hey, and it was actually formerly Sports Lab before that, and then it became Rose City. But they had a great idea. They somehow set up this training facility, and they collected basically all the best guys from the Portland area and southern Washington, right across the river, and they put together this great team of people, and their thing was about scheduling very scheduled and detail-oriented sparring sessions on Saturday. So it would be you and one other guy generally, and you would fight 3 rounds. Each one would have a corner, and people would watch, and they'd film it, and it was great. And the first time I ever went out there, kind of knowing some of the people, this is a kind of a fun story because I saw that you interviewed Brent, but my manager called me several years ago and said, hey, Brent Primus needs a sparring partner on Saturday. This was on a Thursday, and no one can do it. Can you do it? And I knew who Brent Primus was, and I said, well, yeah. And then I made sure to get 2 good nights of sleep, and we went at it. And after that training session, the guys and the gym owners and everybody kind of realized that, number one, I'm a nice guy. Number two, I'm a good training partner. So I was able to come out there literally as much as I want on the weekends. I only had Saturdays available. So about every Saturday they would invite me out. I would come out there. Again, I knew Ryan better because we sparred more, but also we had the Ultimate Fighter experience. Tyson, not as well, but definitely knew him pretty good. We sparred together. I watched him spar. He watched me spar. My wife had a birthday party in downtown Portland. He worked at the place we were at, bought me a drink, which was nice of him. So, yeah, I mean, we kind of do know each other. It's been a while, though, since we've seen each other face-to-face or trained.
Tyson Jeffries, he definitely deserves this shot at the title and to fight you because he's on a 4-fight win streak, but he hasn't fought since November of 2015. It's been a long time since he's been in the cage. So when they offered you this fight, were you surprised? I mean, A, because you have history with him, you used to train with him, and B, because he's been out for such a long time. Like, what was your reaction when they offered you this fight?
Well, yeah, I mean, my first reaction was kind of like, oh, another person I knew. That was my immediate gut reaction. Tyson's got a pretty good ranking out here in the Northwest. He's experienced. His record is good. I mean, he's had a lot of fights. And when I had somebody else actually had brought that to my attention first was, hey, he hasn't fought for a couple years. And to me, it hadn't seemed that long. Like in my mind, I felt like I remember him fighting not too terribly long ago. I think it's definitely important, very important, to try to stay active, right? To make sure the ring rust doesn't build up and to kind of keep that edge. But at the same time, because I don't know 100%, but I'm very, very sure he's been training that whole time. So, sometimes if people, and you, like you said, he is on a 4-fight winning streak, and you don't often see it, but like Robbie Lawler is probably the best example of it. People that kind of disappear off the face of the planet as far as from the main, spotlight, and then they come back and then they're even better. So not competing for a couple years, that's, definitely not ideal. But if he's been training that whole time, which I think he has been, I mean, that's a lot of time to get better. So I don't think that that's going to be a disadvantage to him in particular.
Since you've done this before, fighting against an ex-training partner, if you can go back and remember what it was like leading up to the Ryan Walker fight and remembering back to how you were preparing for that fight, is there anything that you remember about training with Tyson that should come back and help you in this fight? Or has it been enough time that so much has changed that you can't really go off of the past?
Yeah, I tell people a lot of times about the way that I've been my whole life in training, especially because I've been doing some form of martial arts. I mean, I started when I was 5 in my first martial art, and there's only been a couple-year layoff during that time. So, long time of training, and I always tell people that you have to make some assumptions about your opponent, which, there's a saying about assumptions. But if you are really calculated, it's more of like a hypothesis, a very educated guess. If you have to make some assumptions, I think that's important to do, as long as you know where you stand in the universe. So from what I remember, it has been a little bit long enough where some things are a little bit fuzzy, where it's like, was that him or was that Pat Healy, who's a great guy who I train with, and think we've never had to fight each other.
Right.
Or for instance, was that him or was that Jake Smith or whatever. But there are some things that I very clearly remember that I don't really want to speak about, but that give me a very huge edge. I mean, physically as far because it speaks to the skills, but I have seen things that or felt them that are going to help me in the long run. So, I think it's important to make some assumptions, like remember that he did this or he did that or this happened when I did this. But you also have to expect that maybe none of those things are going to happen as well. But when you get into that situation that you remember and you feel it feels like how it used to feel or whatever, that's when you can kind of, if it's there, it, and then you go for it. If it's not there, you have to do something else, change your plan a little bit. But there are some things, and I'm sure he remembers things that he saw in me. So, but I know that hopefully those, if there was weaknesses, they're now gone. Because it has been some time.
What do you think his camp is telling him to do against you in this fight?
Yeah, I mean he's tall. He's about an inch taller than me. We're both really long, gangly guys. Is the best way to describe it. They're probably saying use their reach. Use his reach. I picture him actually trying to wrestle me a little bit. or stand and try to steal the round with some wrestling and things like that. It seemed like in the Ryan Walker fight, great fight. Love the guy. Again, we had to fight each other, but it was a really fun fight. I mean, because I won, but it was a fight that taught us both a lot, and it was a great fight for the fans. But he was out there striking, and he was trying to kind of pressure me against the cage. His pressure felt pretty good, and he tried to steal the rounds with takedowns. So I would imagine they're going to point it a little bit, and so I'm ready for that. I don't know. Other than that, I think trying to probably just win, try to win every round with a little bit of action, maybe steal it with some wrestling.
You don't have the traditional training that we're accustomed to, over the last several years, however long it's been, because, you bring people to you. You don't have that gym that's your one-stop shop where you just show up and you can have everything. You do your own strength and conditioning because you work at a CrossFit gym, so you're doing that by yourself. Then you have Burt Camp, where you do your stand-up, and then you also have Gracie Technics, where you're working your ground. But in addition to that, do you train anywhere else? And also, who are some of the training partners, and who are some of your coaches that are helping you get ready for this fight?
Yeah. So, my training schedule has been, fighting is an individual sport,
mm-hmm.
And it's, you have to do your own work to know what kind of fighter you are, what your style is, So I started wrestling when I was 12. Would have started sooner had I known that I was able. Nobody in my family ever wrestled, so started as a 12-year-old. Built, listened to what the coaches said, drilled what they said, implemented what they said. But I always tried to learn more and study more and tweak more and refine it to always, what works for my body. Because as a kid in wrestling, especially, I was never a physical specimen, and I wouldn't even consider myself one now. Like, I'm not a freak athlete. I just work really, really, really hard. I went into high school. Some people don't know this. I went into high school and I wrestled at 103 pounds. Freshman year at 98 pounds, mm-hmm. Returned sophomore year to wrestle at 103, finished high school wrestling at 140 pounds, and now I walk way higher than that and fight at 170. So my whole life has kind of been on trying to refine my skills the best way that I can with the knowledge that's out there. So I learned this move, I learned it the way I was taught, I implement it the way it was taught, and then I tweak it over time to refine it to me. So that's what I do with my training. That's what I've had to do, and I like it better that way. So in college, for instance, I had a jiu-jitsu only gym. Only jiu-jitsu, mm-hmm. in a gi all the time except for on Saturday. And then and for a while it was that, and then I was able to put together a group of people to train MMA with. And then I had, towards the end of my college career, I had the jiu-jitsu only gym and a boxing gym that was like 20 miles away, and then I would do my own MMA. And so then when I came up here, I did join a big gym. Mm-hmm. The gym was great. It was Team Quest in Tualatin. Mm-hmm. They had a couple locations. Amazing gym, great people, great training partners. It unfortunately closed down. And then I just went back to what I was already doing, bringing people to me. So yeah, I have a degree in exercise science from Oregon State University, so I know how to tweak my strength and conditioning. Don't have to pay anybody to do that. I just can do it myself. Really happy with my training in that area always. And then I'm a Gracie Technics instructor. I teach jiu-jitsu. My jiu-jitsu students are my main training partners, and we just go hard all the time. And then Burke Muay Thai. I met Mr. Burke about 7 years ago, and after my only professional loss, so I'm 9-1. After my only professional loss, lost a decision. Wasn't anything crazy, but I stopped. I worked at CrossFit Monday through Saturday, and I stopped working Saturdays so that I could go to Mr. Burke's, guaranteed once a week, 2-hour practice. You cannot say enough about someone that's been doing martial arts. One of the best instructors. I would say, top 5 best instructors in anything on the planet. And, so that's been invaluable. And I haven't been working Friday evenings recently so that I can go out and see him more. So I piece it together. People are hitting me up all the time, which I love. If you want to train with me and I think it's a good idea, I'll set it up. We'll try to do it. I call lots of other people, Pat Healy, for instance. Brent and I are in contact. Usually I haven't been able to train with him for quite a while, and that's my fault. So, yeah, I have a lot of good contacts that I've built over the years.
The style of training that you do is very similar to how boxing has done it for many, many years, where fighters will bring sparring partners and trainers to them to help them get ready for their fights, as opposed to the MMA model that we've seen for many, many years. Both of them have pros and cons, but do you see the boxing style of training coming over to MMA and that being the way of the future?
You know, I think it's gonna be a long ways away. Again, I thought, I started doing it out of necessity, but I was doing it. I was, for the most part, most of my time, I was getting what I needed to get better, and I think it's because, again, being an exercise science major, being a CrossFit coach, knowing about just workouts and physical activity in general, it takes a lot of work to do what I do. In addition to everything else, it's really nice. That's why group fitness classes, whether it be CrossFit or Zumba, whatever it is, with the group classes, the teams, if you play intramural soccer, if you do this or that or whatever. A lot of people really like the team aspect of things. They know that if I've got a flag football game or a pickup basketball game, and my buddies are going to be there, I think that helps motivate people a lot. And I think that a lot of people need that. And my thing is I don't. I just need bodies. Like, I don't need to be. I'm gonna train regardless. And I'm going to tailor it to everything I need. But, I choose people very, very carefully. I'd love to train with more people, but I have to pick people that are going to be there when I need them. And really what I do, because fighting is very selfish, I don't want to be a jerk about it, is we try to, when those people that I find, we have standing appointments. So one of my very good friends, who's also a Gracie Technics instructor, will be getting his black belt here in September. Every Sunday, I go to his house and we roll in his 2-car garage. And it's that all the time, unless there's like a tsunami or, the UFOs come down. And if there, for some reason, is a conflict, he or I will let each other know in advance, and then we go have a backup plan. So I have to have backup plans A, B, C, D, hopefully not E. So it's a lot of work to do what I do. If you do it right, it's nice, but it is great to just kind of walk into a gym and be like, oh, there's 50 guys here that I have to try to beat up. That's great. I don't know if it's the way of the future. Boxing, you're right, has done it for a long time. What I would say to that is, man, the boxers that do that have a lot of money.
Right.
A lot of money, a lot more money, than I have. So, but it's hard to say. I think the big gym stuff is cool. I get to do big gym training occasionally, and I love it, and I appreciate it. But I really am pleased with the way I'm doing it now. I'm just kind of doing it my way, and if it wasn't working, I would change it.
Obviously, you train with your students, but when you don't have a fight coming up, when you have nothing scheduled and you're just training to stay in shape and waiting for the call to come, do you train with anyone else? Because at these big gyms, everyone, you have to get ready for your fight, but you also have to be a sparring partner for someone else getting ready for their fight. So there's the yin and the yang. You can get, your training in, but you also have to help someone else who's preparing for a totally different fight to get ready for their fight. So since you have a sort of different training than the norm, do you work with anyone who you're just trying to help get them ready for their own fight that's not already a student or client of yours?
Yeah, less so now. I'll speak to that in a moment. But, most recently I was helping an amateur fighter train for an amateur title fight in the same weight class as me. His name was Javon Matthews, and he needed my help, and I could use a body, and you know, we had great training sessions together. We both got to you know, give and take a little bit, and that was great. When that was really the case often, very, very often, was when Rose City still existed. And, you know, it's like, okay, because the only thing I'll really take a break from, or at the time, was, okay, I just fought. I don't really take breaks, I mean, ever. I'll train, but I'll just lower the intensity a little bit. But I don't, after a fight, especially a hard fight, I don't want to go spar hard. So I would take some time off and be like, all right, it's time to go back to the drawing board. It's time to spar again, you know. And I've fought, you know, I've sparred. I had the pleasure of sparring with many greats. I mean, and I'll probably forget. I think I've probably sparred with Pat Healy when he was in camp and I was out of camp. And that's, you know, when you're out of camp and they're in camp, it's always going to be hard. I know I've done that with Brent Primus. I know that, well, I kind of got into camp training with Mike Pierce because I had to. Yeah, and then there's been a bunch of other people. So back then I did, yeah. It's like, okay, I've been working out, but you're in fight shape, and I'm going to do my best, and, you know, I'm going to get tired, and you're not going to be, and that stinks. But, you know, so, yeah, and if people ask for help, you know, again, those people that need my help, you know, those guys at those levels, or the people that I know are going to be a good match for both of us, I have no problem trying to set up a time where we can train together.
This is a strange situation because usually when there's an interim champion in a promotion, usually the interim champion is the one who's fighting all the time, and it's the permanent belt holder that's the guy who's on the sideline. But currently Desmond Hill, he's the interim champion. Am I right in saying that the reason why you guys haven't fought is because when he claimed the interim belt, he broke his hand and he hasn't recovered from that? Is that why this fight hasn't been put together?
Yes, that's exactly right. You know, King of the Cage is a great organization. I really can't say enough about them. They're very organized, very professional. They have a lot of people, a lot of talent to draw from. The interim belt, and again, it's nothing. I mean, it's nothing against them. I thought that offering an interim belt was a little too quick. I had the opportunity of getting a quick fight after the Ryan fight, which would have made the interim belt there wouldn't have been one if I had taken the fight. So it is a little bit on me. The fight was for me at the time, being that it was going to be out of state, and I just had a long fight and travel and my corner and my camp. It just wasn't the right time, so I had to decline that. Respectfully, I can't fight that soon. It just wouldn't make sense for us. And so the interim was offered up. You know, he won. He did break his hand. He's not going to be ready. They told me that they checked in often. They were really, really trying hard to put that fight together. You know, but if you break your hand, you have to get surgery. So you break it when they schedule you for surgery. You know, who knows how long, how many weeks. It's always going to be minimum 6 weeks after something like that. So he wasn't ready. They wanted that fight to happen. They know that that should have been the fight, but you know, he can't do it, and so they found, you know, the next best thing.
How much do you know about Desmond Hill, and what are your thoughts about a potential fight against him?
Yeah, you know, if that does happen, I haven't looked into it too much because it hasn't been an imminent thing. It's just always kind of been, you know, no one's ever like, it might be this time. So didn't do a ton of research on him yet. But I know that, like I've seen an interview when he did win the interim belt, and I know what his record, I mean, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I remember what it looks like, and, you know, if anybody was going to beat him, it was going to be me. You know, he's more of a heavy-handed guy, and I don't give things away for free standing up. You have to pick me apart before you can knock me out. I'm not going to, my hands aren't going to be down. I'm not going to stand still, and if you do have that much power, if you do believe in your hands that much, you don't believe in your ground game, and I do believe in my ground game. So I see the fight as using my striking, being safe standing, and easily winning on the ground.
It's a very big deal for you to be the King of the Cage welterweight champion, because if you look at King of the Cage's very rich history, because they've been around since 1998, if you look at their history, they've had so many great fighters go through that promotion. So many great up-and-coming fighters who they've built, or veteran guys that they've helped rebuild when they've fallen on hard times. They've had so many great fighters hold a title in that promotion. Fighters like Uriah Faber, Daniel Cormier, Diego Sanchez, Rory McDonald, Joe Stevenson, Dean Lister, Joey Villasenor, Bobby Green, Tim Means, Jimmy Rivera, Mike Kyle, Trevor Prangley, Mac Danzig, Paul Buentello, Marvin Eastman, Danielle Taylor, Vernon White, Javier Vasquez, Mike Guyman, Charlie Valencia, John Alessio, Anthony Lapsley, Sean Strickland, Derek Campos, Russell Doan, Henry Corrales. The list goes on and on of great fighters they've had in their promotion hold the title. Then there's the fighters who didn't hold the title, because they've had so many greats come through the doors of the promotion. There's great fighters that didn't even hold the King of the Cage title who went on to have successful careers and even become UFC champion. Fighters like Ronda Rousey, Demetrius Johnson, he fought in King of the Cage. Quentin Rampage Jackson, that's where he got his start. It was in King of the Cage. Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit, TJ Dillashaw, he started in King of the Cage. There's been so many great fighters who have gone on to the UFC or Bellator or any other big show, depending on what the big shows were, because like I said, King of the Cage has been around for so long. They've outlived so many of these other great promotions. I mean, King of the Cage has had so many great fighters come through their promotion. So many great fighters who have gone on to fight in the big shows. So many great fighters who have gone on to be champions in the big show. And then some fighters who have gone on to become legends in this industry. So King of the Cage has had a lot of great fighters be a part of their organization over the years. So what does it mean for you to be the King of the Cage welterweight champion, and how much does the belt mean to you?
Yeah, so what I'll tell you is, if there was a fire I'm sitting in my living room, if my place caught on fire, I'm looking right at my belt. It sits on my entertainment center, so when I'm on the couch at the end of a long day, I look at it and I can see it. And if there was a fire, I would grab the King of the Cage belt and my brown belt from BJJ, and I would exit the building. Those would be the only two things I would save. I have lots of, everybody has possessions, but and the King of the Cage belt could be remade. I could buy a new brown belt, but those are my belts that were given to me for the reason that they were given to me, and I don't ever want them to go away. So, I mean, it's humongous. I've told a lot of people. I did a lot of interviews about it as well. Whether it's amateur or professional, a title fight in MMA, in boxing, in whatever, will change your life. It'll change your life. If you lose, it'll change your life. It will make you quit, or it'll make you work twice as hard. If you win, it'll make you get complacent, or it'll make you work twice as hard. So I was talking about it. If I win this fight, it's going to change my life forever, and it has. And it's again, King of the Cage is a great organization, and when I fight to win. I don't hold back. I try to finish, and if you do a good job at your job, you get more job opportunities. And so I'm very, I'm glad that I've been able to stay so busy, because in my early pro career, I couldn't. But, when you're on the top of the mountain like I am with being the champion, people want to come up and get what you've got, and they have to fight you for it. So it's amazing. I love it.
I really do love King of the Cage. Always have. Because you got to remember, I'm from Michigan, so the only show in town was King of the Cage, because at that point in time, the sport was illegal. No shows, except for King of the Cage, were putting on MMA events in this state. So if you wanted to see great MMA action live, King of the Cage was the show to watch. If you wanted to see an event up close and personal and you lived in Michigan, King of the Cage putting on events at the Soaring Eagle Casino in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, that was the place to be. And there were so many great events that they've done in Michigan. One of the best events I've ever been to was a show that, obviously they did this show after the sport had been legalized in Michigan, but it was in 2010. It was at the Cobo Arena in Detroit. The show aired on HDNet, Access TV now, but it was HDNet at the time when King of the Cage had a TV deal with HDNet. And even though it was on TV, I still ended up going to the event live because it was in Michigan, and I'm a Michigan guy. So I went to that show, and that night, Joe Dirksen fought against Chad Herrick in the main event, with Dirksen winning the fight by split decision. Darren Cruikshank, he fought on that card, and he won his fight. Waylon Lowe knocked out Steve Berger that night. The late, great Dom O'Grady won the King of the Cage lightweight title that night when he subbed David Shepard. But the highlight of the night for me was the middleweight title fight between Brandon Hunt and Brad Burrick, because it was a great story leading into that fight. Here it is, two Michigan guys fighting in Michigan for a world title. Brandon Hunt and Brad Burrick had fought twice before and were 1-1 against each other, but that night Brandon Hunt left no doubt to who the better fighter is, because the two previous fights between Hunt and Burrick, they were both 5-round decisions. This fight, Brandon Hunt won in the second round by knockout, so he had lost a battle to Burrick in the past, but he won the war because the two previous fights had been decisions. This time it was a clear-cut stoppage victory for Hunt, and he won the trilogy, because in trilogy fights, no one ever remembers the guy who won once. And on top of that, what even made Hunt's performance better was he fought in Detroit, and he's a Detroit police officer. So everything came full circle for him, so it was a great moment, and it was a great fight. It was one of the best events I've ever seen. Another great event that I saw in Michigan, again, it was after the sport had become legalized in this state, but it was King of the Cage Homecoming at the Soaring Eagle Casino in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. That fight card featured Brandon Hunt versus Angelo Popovsky in the main event for the King of the Cage middleweight title, with Hunt winning the fight by first round TKO. That was a great fight and a great event. That night also featured the return of Green Gloves, Jason Ireland. He won that night by TKO in the first round, and he won that fight after a 5-year hiatus from the sport. And what makes it an even better story is I was at that fight at the Soaring Eagle Casino back in November of 2007. It was King of the Cage Bad Boys. Bad Boys 2 was that fight card in Detroit with Joe Dirksen and Brandon Hunt and Darren Cruikshank and all those guys. But King of the Cage Bad Boys, that was a lightweight title fight in the main event between Clay French and Jason Ireland, and that was Ireland's last fight until September of 2011. He ended up losing that fight to Clay French, and James Lee, he fought on that card, and Dan Severn, he fought on that card, and that fight card also featured the last amateur fight of Miles Jury, who currently fights in the UFC. And so it's very interesting that all these events in one way, shape, or form end up all tying together. So I've always been a fan of King of the Cage. I've always loved their gloves. I've always loved their cage. I've always loved their logo. I've always loved those promos that they do. Steve Inman does a great job. I love his voice. I love all those promos. I always had King of the Cage shirts. I've always had King of the Cage DVDs. So I've always had a slight obsession with King of the Cage. I've always loved this promotion. But the one thing that I love the most about King of the Cage is their belt. They have the best belt in MMA right now. There's no belt that's better than the King of the Cage title belt. So, how heavy is that belt?
That's what's interesting. I have a lot of heavy belts, and I would judge. Well, I used to. I have 5 amateur belts, and they're all very heavy. And I would have judged the heaviness as it being better. But man, this thing is so streamlined. It's crazy, and it's the shiniest thing you've ever seen. It's actually very light, and it snaps. When you snap it on, you can't take it off. So if anybody ever tries, if I'm wearing it and you try to take it off me, you won't be able to. But really nice leather. It's certainly the best belt that I own of all of mine. Very high quality, very, very good belt.
Do you have a green carrying case for it? Because I know in the past they used to give you this green sleeve that you put the belt in. Do they still do that?
Yeah, I didn't know you knew that. Yes, I do, and I still have it. And when it's traveled with me, it's been in that.
Hobbies outside of fighting?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. Again, like I was saying, and I'm really glad my wife is not on the on the phone too, because my schedule is very regimented as far as practice. There is a lot of flex time that is not practice time. Not a lot, but I'm at work. That's the time, and then I'm training. But hobbies outside. Again, I like to. As a fighter, I feel like you have to relax and you have to enjoy. You just have to enjoy life and be able to kick back a little bit. I am blessed and thankful to have great friends around me. Being a CrossFit coach, I get to see almost 200 people, multiple times a week. And they're all very nice and very generous with great community, so people are always kindly offering, hey, I'm having a barbecue, or hey, we're going to do this event, come along. So spending time with friends, with my family is very, very important. My family in general, we have my family, and then my parents, and then my sister and her boyfriend, soon-to-be father-in-law. What's up, Joe? Brother-in-law, excuse me. Being with friends and family and just kind of relaxing is really important to me. Really like it a lot. Again, my son is 6, so soon, he just turned 6 soon. A lot of it's going to be hopefully shuffling him around to different martial arts and things like that. He knows a little bit of stuff. He's got a guillotine. He's got a rear naked choke. He's got some pretty good kicks and really hard punches. He'll sock you right in the face with the closed fists. But, those are kind of being with friends and family, getting to enjoy the time that you have. And, that's probably the main one.
Your wife's maiden name is Healy. By any chance, is she related to Pat and Ryan Healy?
That's awesome. Yeah, the first time I ever, I guess the first time we were kind of entertaining the idea of dating, I had to ask her. I said, hey, and she had, I kind of remember the room that we were in. We were in college, and I remember we were surrounded by a bunch of other people, and I asked her that, and she said, I don't think so. I was like, do you even know what I'm talking about? And I think she knew, she was aware of the fight scene a little bit and things like that. But no, unfortunately not, so.
I had to ask you because you were talking about Pat Healy earlier, and you're from Oregon. I thought maybe she would be his sister or a cousin, some way she'd be related to him, but I guess the world is a little bit bigger than I thought. I guess it isn't a small world after all. Do you have any pre-fight rituals or superstitions?
Yeah, some of them are secret. None of them are that weird as far as, I don't sacrifice any goats or anything like that, but I am very, like I was mentioning, I'm very regimented in my training and what I do. And my big thing is I just generally won't let that be derailed while being polite at the same time, which I think most people can't do. And now if I had my buddy Spencer, who's in my corner and has been with me for years and years, he would have some probably funny stories. His perspective is very hilarious. And but yeah, I just try to do everything the same. The coming down to the weigh-ins, I mean, that's actually the hardest part about fighting. The fight's really fun. Training is hard. Weight cutting is harder by a number of factors, and then the fight's fun. But I just try to be organized and prepared. Preparation is the biggest thing. If I'm prepared, if I did all my training, then I'm prepared. If I did my diet right, then I'm prepared to lose the final weight. If I sauna at the correct time, I'm prepared, And I've gotten less superstitious over the years, because I had to. As an amateur, you could kind of like live in a cave, and no one wanted to talk to you. No one gave a crap that you even existed until after you fought, and then people are like, "Oh, hey, cool, good job." So I used to close myself off from the entire world, and back then there wasn't smartphones. I mean, unless they cost who knows how many, but I didn't know anybody with a smartphone back then. So my thing was I would disappear for 2 days, and I would go stay with a friend, my friend Spencer, and I wouldn't look at my phone. So if somebody texted me, back then when texting you had to hit the number 3 5 times to get the letter you wanted. I short answers. I wouldn't even look. I wouldn't even look at them. I would weigh in. I didn't want to see anybody that I knew until I won the fight, and over time that's kind of changed. But the big thing is just kind of being prepared. The funny story I guess I could say recently is my buddy Spencer again was standing right there, and there was like a bunch of another fighter was in our hotel room, and his camp was in there. So there were like way too many dudes, probably 7 or 8 of us. And I had just brushed my teeth, and I was waiting on my other friend to come back because he had some beef jerky. I was feeling a little bit hungry, so very particular about kind of snacking and making sure my meals are correct and that I feel full. So I just brushed my teeth, longer than normal even, because I wanted to have, when you bite down on your mouthpiece, you don't want any gross stuff in your teeth.
Right.
Guy comes in, my buddy comes in, Trevor, and hands me the beef jerky. I ate the beef jerky, and then I brushed my teeth again in front of all these people, and they're like, "Wow, you're pretty serious about that toothbrushing, or whatever." So little stuff like that is just kind of funny. One of the ones that I have talked about before, every time, whether there's a top of the cage or not, so some cages that I've been in, when you enter the cage, you walk up the steps, they have the foam padding above you. Some are open. I always touch the top of the cage with my right hand. Don't know why, but I've always done it, and so I'm not going to stop. And even if there's nothing, you'll see it in the King of the Cage. It doesn't have the cage that I fought in Oregon doesn't have a cover, so you'll see me go up and I'll high five nothing and walk in there. I also too, last one is I don't, and you can think whatever you want, tough guys out there, because it's been proven to work, but I never look an opponent directly in the eye on any kind of face-off. Because you don't need to. We're about to fight, so we don't need to make eye contact. So you can look at me, and I'll look at your forehead or look at your chest, and I don't need to be that aggressive, because there's nothing more competitive or aggressive than fighting somebody. So try to just keep it casual.
You have a little bit of the fireball kid in you, because Takanori Gomi, he never looks his opponents in the eyes.
He's on like another planet, though. I'm still on Earth, and he's like on Jupiter or something. beating up 80 guys at once or something.
Do you have any post-fight rituals?
Like I said earlier, post-fight always the first thing is, and it's been, like I said, it's great to have fans that, I have these incredible fans, and I can't list them all right now off the top of my head, but I have all these great fans that have just seen me fight and just came up and talked to me, and I was always happy to talk to anybody that that wants to talk to me about fighting in general. And I've always been that way, not even during fighting, but if somebody wants to ask me questions about fighting, I'll talk your ear off. Whatever you got, I'll let you know, kind of like what we're doing right now. But post-fight, what's been happening at King of the Cage is, I bet you it took me 20 minutes to go from the cage to the warm-up area, because I wanted to make sure that I took pictures with everybody that wanted pictures, all those people were new. I wanted to hug my mom, hug my wife, all that kind of stuff. And then we go to the back, and me and my buddies always, and my manager is always there. We always break down what happened. And it's never just, a lot of it is, wow, you killed the guy or whatever, and wow, that was perfect. And then we talk about the finer points. And then we leave the casino at this time, if we're speaking about King of the Cage. Mm-hmm. And I'm always, again, ready to talk to people, and my buddies kind of just have to push me through everybody. Like, the paparazzi's here, even though it's not, and then they push me through, and then we go back to the hotel room. We further break down the fight. We did this good, we did that good, this, that, and then I take a shower, and then we go see everybody that we know. So that's usually how it goes. But there's immediate reflection on the fight. And in the last few fights, I've done like an interview right after, whether it be with Northwest Fight Scene or the local newspaper in the area. But there's immediate feedback on, we could have done this, we could have done that, this was good, this was bad, no matter how well it went.
What motivates you in life and in fighting?
Fighting motivates me. Fighting motivates me in life and in fighting. People don't give enough credit to martial art or to MMA. It's getting so much better now. So people now think that MMA is just like the NFL has always been, or like the NBA. Like, oh, it's a cool sport that's on ESPN mm-hmm. or whatever, and those guys are athletes.
Right.
But a lot of us, me, I would say more than most people. I'm a martial artist. Like, started when I was 5. That was 24 years ago. I've got a quarter century of martial arts experience under my belt, and very respectful. Like, I try to be polite. If I need to be kind of cold, I can do that. But you'll never see me. You'll never see me purposely instigate trash talk. You'll never, So I've always been. I feel like, or I've tried to be, and I'm not perfect, and no one is, but I've always tried to be very respectful, and I really, really like the actual martial arts aspect of everything, of respect and honor and all of those things, and so yeah, I tell people sometimes, and people don't believe me, but the reason that I cut my fingernails, and this was actually a Fight Club thing, and that was before I knew about Fight Club, the book or the movie with Brad Pitt and whatever, mm-hmm. Edward Norton. When I was 12, I made sure to cut my fingernails like every other day to wrestle. So the reason I cut my fingernails is to fight, because I don't want to scratch my training partner. Mm-hmm. The reason that I eat the correct food that won't affect my performance is because of fighting. The reason, that I want to work up into the highest levels of fighting is because I just want to be the absolute best fighter I can be. And I've said in interviews before, maybe I won't be the best fighter ever. Maybe I won't be a world champion. I take a fight at a time. I've always done that. I would take one fight at a time. If I'm fighting, I'm going to win. So if I keep winning, even if I lose, down the road, I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep getting better. So what drives me the absolute most for fighting and life is to get better at what I'm doing. The task is more important. I would rather be the best fighter I can technically than, close my eyes and just have knockout power. I would rather, and it's something that takes a lot of work. I want to be a better husband all the time. I want to be a better father and all that stuff. But it's just improvement, constant improvement, and the way that you do that is you have that drive, you have that goal and that focus in your mind, but you have to stay consistent. You can never take a break. You can't take a break on fighting. Your break from fighting is like a rest day or a week or two of just kind of going through the motions, but you can't just stop. You have to keep going. You know, if you want to get better in life, if you want to be a better public speaker, you got to speak. You know, you have to be in front of crowds. If you want to get better at your job, you know, you have to work harder than the guy next to you and things like that. So, just constant improvement. If I'll be happy at the end of the day, and I think I have 10 more years. I think I have at least 10 more years in fighting. In 10 years, if I'm the best fighter I could have been, I'll be happy with that, even if I lose.
Besides fighting, what are you passionate about?
Yeah, you know, I would say I'm passionate about other people. Love seeing improvement, because this is actually my 11th year as a coach. I started when I was 18, so I'm in my 11th year as a coach. I've been coaching something there. It's all been dangerous stuff, you know. It's been wrestling, it's been boxing, it's been Muay Thai, it's been CrossFit, is obviously the huge majority of it. But I'm passionate about helping other people. Really, really nerdy fact about me is, and thank God my family, they jumped on board with me now finally, but I was actually going to be a zoology major for most of high school. I wanted to work with animals and things that I'm passionate about, you know, besides friends and family and fighting and things like that, is our family's pets. We have a bunch of freshwater fish, and we have a bearded dragon, and it's cool because my son gets to learn about kind of animals, and he gets to be exposed to these things, and my wife, who would have never in a million years ever allowed some kind of reptile in the house, I finally got her to agree a year ago to get one, and you know, it's something that's kind of fun that brings our family together, and so that's my very nerdy. Probably the nerdiest thing about me is my animal trivia and my pets, and I've helped people set up their own home aquariums and all this stuff. So yeah, that's, everybody always laughs about that. So
you have a YouTube channel where viewers can learn practical jiu-jitsu, BJJ moves that work on the mat, in the cage, and on the street. Now, you really are well-versed in submissions. You know, if you look at your record, you have, you know, a lot of wins by guillotine, a lot of wins by rear naked choke. And if you look at your channel, you cover many different moves. So whether it's using it in the cage, on the mat, on the street, or teaching it to someone, do you have a favorite submission?
Wow, yeah, that's another great. That's almost like the movie question. It's funny that movies and jiu-jitsu, like strangling people or breaking arms or legs, is the same, but it is. Yeah, and I mean, one thing that about my channel is, you know, that a lot of people didn't know or don't know still, except for my loyal subscribers, is everything on that channel is something that I use and that works. Again, exactly like I said, on the mat, in the cage, and on the street. My things, I mostly do gi jiu-jitsu, but it works no-gi, and it works in a fight. And all of my submissions are based off fighting. And a lot of my submissions, if I'm going for that submission, I could probably punch or elbow your face, which will make the submission even easier. And I stand behind all of the things I do 100%. But yeah, the favorite submission, I would always rather prefer to choke someone. I can't say favorite of all time necessarily. I've got some memorable ones, but you know, a choke is going to get it done against someone that's much bigger than you, much stronger than you. You know, a small woman could choke a large man unconscious with the right technique, but might not be able to armbar Kimura or things like that. So, any type of choke, I'm pretty well known for, guillotines and front chokes and things like that. But if there's a neck, you know, I'm going to choke it.
Why do you love gi jiu-jitsu so much? Now, obviously, you don't dislike no-gi because you train no-gi from time to time, but for the most part, you train in the gi. A lot of people in MMA don't like the gi. They think it's worthless. Like there's that age-old debate: gi, no gi. Everyone has their own opinion, whether it's in the grappling world or in the MMA world. Like everyone has their own opinion. But why do you like training in the gi so much?
Yeah, I mean, and there is schools of thought both ways. Mm-hmm. The simple answer is you should be able to submit an opponent anywhere, anytime, no matter what they're wearing.
Right.
So if you're on the beach and they're in a swimsuit, if you're in Alaska climbing Denali and you've got all your ski gear on, that would be a pretty easy choke.
Right.
They'd already be breathing hard, and they would have a hood on, and you could choke them. But yeah, I mean, a lot of MMA people don't like the gi, and my thing, I guess, if I was looking at it objectively, is that I came from wrestling, so I already know how to control somebody that was wearing a singlet, or
right.
as everybody else that never wrestled calls it, a onesie, So I already knew that body control without any handles, that I could grip. The gi, though, I had a buddy, Sean Ryan, who I worked with, and I had won a couple fights, and I had never trained in a gi, and he said he was at the time a judo black belt and a BJJ purple belt, and he said, you got to train in the gi. It's going to make your everything tighter. It's going to make everything better. And I was like, okay. I literally was like, oh, well, that was easy. Just one reference, and then started training in a gi not too terribly long after that, once I found a place, which was actually hard at the time. It's not hard anymore. But the thing about a lot of, and there are places and they're getting better now, but a lot of times MMA guys don't train in the gi because they don't legitimately have a great black belt that trains in a gi. They don't come from a traditional jiu-jitsu background, and that is changing quite a bit now, but when I was coming up, it was different. So if you get a guy that's, and again, I think you should be able to do both, but now it is getting better, but for the most part, when I was looking at bigger MMA gyms or fighting guys from those big MMA gyms, is they did MMA jiu-jitsu, which isn't jiu-jitsu. It's like how to avoid a guillotine and a rear naked choke. It wasn't the finer points. And so going back to with like training and tailoring my training to myself and bringing my own camp to myself, I learned all of my disciplines within that discipline and then put it together. So grew up wrestling in America, folk style wrestling, learned that in its entire, certainly not in its entirety, but on its own. And then I learned how to do jiu-jitsu with a gi on, and with people that just did jiu-jitsu, then went to a boxing gym, sparred just professional boxers, go to Burke Muay Thai camp, where a lot of the guys just do Muay Thai. So you got to train it. You're missing pieces if you don't train anything within its entirety. I think gi jiu-jitsu is one of those ones. I can very easily go from gi and no gi. A lot of times I will submit people even faster going from gi on Wednesday to Thursday no gi, because I can move pretty fast. I'm very heavy for such a skinny guy, but if the no gi speed is added, people are usually in pretty big trouble.
Some people would say that the best moment of your career was when you knocked out David Evans with a very clean knockout in the first round. A lot of people would say that's the best moment of your career. I'm sure if we ask your wife, she'll say the best moment of your career was when you submitted John Garcia, and then after that fight, you proposed to her. Yes. At this point in time, right now, with all your amateur experience and 10 fights into your pro career, at this point in time, what would you say is the best moment of your career?
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it from a number of different ways. That John Garcia fight, that's probably got to be the one because it was bigger in so many ways. If you look at it just from fighting, like if I looked at the John Garcia fight without the proposal, and I looked at the David Evans fight, the John Garcia fight was the fastest fight, 25 seconds, choked him unconscious standing up. Mm-hmm. David Evans, the guy that they flew in from Detroit to try, to give me a challenge to try to knock my head off, I knocked him out in one punch. So the knockout was great because I hadn't done it. It was a long time coming, but as far as biggest moments including my life and fighting all wrapped into one, John Garcia's probably got to be the one, because the other cool thing about that was the first and only ever Civil War cage fight. So in Oregon, there's Oregon State,
right,
and there's U of O.
Right.
And U of O has gotten very good at football recently, so everybody knows about them. But they had the fight on campus at Oregon State in Gill Coliseum, which is where the basketball team obviously plays. And I fractured my nose 1 month before that fight and didn't spar after I fractured my nose, didn't spar. So I went in with a nose that wasn't 100%, with a ring in my corner bucket next to the ice bag and the end swell and all that stuff. And I went out there in front of, what I thought about it was every single person I knew in a college town. And I said, there's no way, just like every fight, there's no way I'm not going to win. And I went out there, and he took a really bad shot, got a little nervous, and I choked him out and proposed, and it was incredible. The best part about it, even though, too, was that ESPN College Game Day was there, and they announced on live television the engagement, and I was at work when they did that. It was about 7:30 in the morning, and I almost fainted. It was pretty great. So that's probably the best fight for many reasons.
Yeah, that has my vote, because the finish is John Jones, Lyoto Machida-esque. Like, it's kind of like that.
It is.
The referee,
And I did it first, though.
Yeah, that's right. It's not quite as brutal because the referee was able to catch John Garcia before he went face down, but it's the same, basically the same thing. If the referee isn't there, it's absolutely identical. So that's the one.
What's funny about that is, I think who did it before me was why am I forgetting his name? Jorgensen. And he lifted the guy off, his feet weren't on the ground. He tapped, guy tapped out, and he dropped him on his face.
Yeah.
So I think within several months I got the John Garcia win, and I remember seeing the Jorgensen fight, and I said, what would I do if I felt the guy go limp? Would I drop him on his face, or would I help set him down? And so going into this fight, going to marry my wife, the ref did most of it, but I just kind of helped guide him to the ground. I was like, oh, there's your answer.
Right. A standing guillotine, it's always nasty. Dan Miller has one of the nastiest ones ever. I can't remember who he fought off the top of my head, but he cranked the neck so much that the guy's ear touched his sternum. I
remember seeing a picture of that. That
in the IFL. In the IFL. That's when I did it. Now, you tried out for season 22 of The Ultimate Fighter. Is the only reason why you didn't make it onto that show is because they decided not to use your weight class? Because that season, that was the Conor McGregor, Uriah Faber season. It was just lightweights. It was guys from the USA and Europe. Is that the only reason why you didn't make it onto the show, is because they decided not to use welterweights?
If you ask me, that's 100% why. Maybe. So there was over 150 welterweights that tried out. The first stage, I was in the second group of 50 to go in and try out, and I was saying to the other Oregon, all the Rose City guys at the time, I said, every grappling tournament I've ever been in, they call me first match. And we go in there, and Dana Silva says my name first. I go, see? Walked out on the mat, destroyed the guy. Absolutely, just so dynamic, so fast. It was only 90 seconds long, so I said I'm going to get the most tired on purpose I could ever get in 90 seconds. Submitted the guy once, had him in trouble at the end. Just went completely crazy. So everybody grapples, and then they cut half the people or more, and then they had us hit pads, and I hit pads, and then they cut half of those people or more. And then we went to the interview phase. And so of our group of just over 150, it was like 157 or something like that, 30 of us got interviewed. And I interviewed, felt like the interview went really great, and waited about 8 hours for the answers to be rendered. My name wasn't called. I told myself I wasn't going to get bummed about it, but man, I thought I did think I had it. I was like, I nailed the interview. I crushed the grappling. No way. I was 5-0 at the time. There's no way they're not going to pick me. They didn't pick me, and within an hour or so of the decision, we saw on Twitter that they didn't pick any welterweights. So, yeah, it was a bummer. It was a good experience. The hard part about it for me was, besides not making it, but was that I had to get the GoFundMe to even go. So I had all these people that, again, can't speak to it enough, such great friends, family, fans. The only reason I was able to go is because of all those people, and my intention was to get on the show and make those people's money worth it, and I didn't, but, we got right back on the saddle. I was sitting in the Powell Station Hotel in Las Vegas where the tryouts were, and my manager was booking me that first King of the Cage fight I had. So we got right back to it.
Does it bother you that the injury that you suffered in the Aaron Hedrick fight is now known as the Michael Chandler injury? Because you're the guy, you had the same injury, and he showed a lot of great heart, but you had the same injury as him, and you ended up winning that fight. You found a way to get the job done. So does it bother you whenever because that injury is going to happen again? Like, it's just a matter of time. It might not be this year, it might not be next year, it might not be 5 years from now, it might not be 10 years from now, but eventually that injury will happen again, and when people see it, oh, that's what happened to Michael Chandler, but you're the guy who pulled out the win. So does it bother you that it's going to be known as the Michael Chandler injury?
So there's a lot of things that bother me about it. Number one, so first of all, Brent, I've got to meet Brent and train with him, so I know the guy. Great guy, works super hard. I also, from everything I've seen and what everybody else knows, Michael Chandler, super nice guy, super
great guy.
They're both, we're all people, and which is what people don't remember. And some fighters are total jerks. And they are, bad people. There's been people that, I haven't been convicted of a crime, I haven't done this or that, and, so we're people. And so these guys are two great guys. Chandler's a champion. He goes out there. What bums me out about it, again, because I've experienced the injury, is that people don't give Brent credit for doing that.
Right.
And it's hard to take away. I have to say I am biased because I know Brent. But I'm also not that biased because I had the same injury, and I know that the reason that I did win was because we were clinched, and I snapped him down and did another standing high elbow guillotine.
Right.
Had he broke range, I would have just had to stand still. That was my plan. If he broke range, I would have had to stand there, and I would have had to just punch with minimal footwork. And the guy who I had every intention of beating would have beat me. And the reason that the excuse of is whatever it is, if you kick somebody in the front leg, which is we kick the front leg to damage the front leg to slow the guy down. If you happen to hit the nerve, whether you're aiming for it or not, that fight was sustained that injury was sustained within the fight. If you can't fight and win because you're injured, because the other guy injured you, you lose. And Brent in the cage was very respectful. Chandler was fired up too, but still pretty respectful. I can understand.
Right.
Certainly. He wanted to fight. I think it's a little bit. The ref should have either called the fight because he couldn't stand up, or let him fight until he got knocked unconscious, which is what would have happened.
Right.
almost 100% certainty. The doctor stoppage was kind of lame, but yeah, what people don't know and again, just looking at it from me being injured that way, but I do know Brent, so a little bit of bias, I guess. It's hard not to be, but yeah, man, I was going to be in big trouble. If I didn't win right at that moment, I would have been picked apart by someone that would have never picked me apart if I was 100%. And Brent's an incredible striker. He's incredible striker, even better at jiu-jitsu. Chandler's got that crazy power. He's a great wrestler. They're going to fight again. I hope it goes. I hope it's not a controversial fight. I hope nobody gets hurt again. But yeah, it's a bummer that, because I knew immediately what had happened as soon as he stepped down and said he can't feel his foot, because I watched it live, man, and I knew what happened. And it's no joke. And I just think that if you win a fight, you win a fight.
When I was watching that fight, I think it was the Oregon connection between you and Brent Primus that triggered you, but I remember watching that fight and thinking of you and that injury, because had it been a broken ankle, I'm sure we would have seen the bone moving around. So I'm like, I think this might be the same injury that Ben Egli had in one of his fights. So I was watching that, and I think it was the Oregon connection between you and Primus that triggered that. And it's kind of weird because, you're the Oregon guy who had that happen to you, and he's the Oregon guy who did it to someone, so
right.
that's kind of funny. And you gave a great breakdown of that injury on your YouTube channel, so I don't want to get all into that because people can just go to your YouTube channel and check it out. You said basically, broke it down perfectly, said everything that needs to be said. But one thing I wanted to ask you about that injury is the recovery time. How long is that? And also, when you suffer that injury, what are you feeling? Is it like your foot's asleep? Is it numb? Are you feeling nothing? Are you feeling a lot of pain? What's it like having that injury?
Well, the great part about it is during the fight, and adrenaline is probably a big part of it. But even after the fight, wasn't so bad. Like that night or the next day, even. It's the weirdest thing in the world. So when you hit the nerve controls like the feeling in your foot, but also controls the muscles in your foot. So my foot, literally, and lower leg was completely numb. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't control it, and I couldn't feel that it was there. But it's kind of the way I was explaining it to, it was my wife or a friend of ours that had a child. It's kind of like when a woman gets an epidural during birth, is you can't feel anything happening to you. But you can kind of feel pressure, if that makes sense. Like, right. There is no pain or anything like that. And so the weird part is the muscles aren't controlling it. And so that's why in my fight, he kicked me, I circled away pretty fine, pretty okay, and then he kicked me again. I went to check it, and when I picked my foot up, my foot was just hanging straight down, which is when I first rolled it, and then rolled it several more times. And what really took the longest to recover was that because I couldn't feel the foot, I did a full ankle inversion sprain, and I could feel what I was talking about, like feeling kind of like the pressure or the movement, but no pain, as I felt all my ligaments in my ankle when I kneed the guy in the face on the bad leg. I felt everything stretch. I didn't feel anything pop, didn't hear anything pop, but I felt this lengthening in my body, and it didn't hurt at all. I won, tripped walking to my corner, had to barely could get out of the cage, and I had a half a softball size swelling already because I actually completely ruptured one of the tendons in my ankle, which thank God that the ankle usually can regrow by itself. But it was about, and people have asked me, and I made it in the video, but it had to have been 6 weeks before I was close to 100% function, but not 100% feeling. It still kind of felt weird, but I was at Burt Camp the next Saturday, taped up tight, and I could kick. It was my left ankle. I could kick with my right foot, and my injured ankle could support me, but I couldn't kick left-legged for a long time. So that injury happened October 1st. I fought 3 rounds plus a couple minutes just fine. So it wouldn't have been so bad. The nerve tingling and pain, the nerve numbness and tingling lasted almost a month. So that affected the way I walked and affected some of my other training. And I like to do a lot of box jumps in my strength and conditioning. Couldn't really do box jumps at a normal fast pace because without a taped ankle because my foot wasn't reacting correctly. But I trained through it. I modified the things that I needed to modify, and it turned out to be okay. Don't notice any lasting problems, or haven't since then. But yeah, it was really the ankle roll that slowed me down. So if he didn't, which I don't know how Chandler wouldn't, unfortunately, he probably sprained his ankle too. But he'll be back ready to train and rematch Brent Primus.
Favorite food?
Oh, that's a great one. Well, so I'm already kind of cutting weight, so I like spicy. I like spicy food. I put sriracha on everything at this point. But we've got a couple good restaurants that we like. If I had to say, And we're spoiled in Portland. I don't know if you've ever been out here, but, man, we have some great quality food places. And it's all simple stuff, but it's been redone in a much nicer fashion. But if you ask me right now, because I am hungry, we knew a couple really nice places that have great burgers, And people are like, oh, it's just a hamburger. But these places that would be my go-to. I would say that after I weigh in, this has been every fight I've ever had. After weigh-ins, breakfast food is my number one go-to. So if I'm really starving, I like breakfast food. Right now, if you ask me, I would say a good gourmet burger.
Favorite band and or solo artist?
Oh, yeah, that's funny. People make fun of me about this all the time because I grew up with my parents listened to what we would now call classic rock. I loved the Beatles growing up. Started listening to rap and hip hop at a young age, and then I couldn't probably say a single artist. Now I'm a big fan, and people could say whatever they want, but I'm a big fan of kind of electronic music, the house music, the EDM type stuff. I just like the listening to the beats. I don't need a bunch of words, and that's good workout music for me too. So I couldn't probably say a specific group, but yeah, that's my genre, I guess.
Favorite TV show, and it can be a show currently on the air or a show no longer on the air, just overall favorite TV show.
Favorite TV show it's got to be a tie between The Office and Parks and Rec. Those are the ones I've probably watched the most and rewatched too many times on Netflix.
If you could trade places with anyone in the world for a week, who would you trade places with and why?
Well, yeah, that's an intense one. I would think that trading places with a world leader, I don't think would be fun at all. Any world leader, Donald Trump at the moment, or of any country. But I think it would be a cool experience to see, at what level. I mean, what do those people know? What level are they operating at? I mean, it would be nice to just go and live as some guy that has $39 million or $1 billion. But I think it would be the most insightful to see what someone running a country or at the highest end of what they do would probably be my answer, because I could just look on Instagram and see what billionaires are doing, but you can't see all the stuff about world leaders and what happens behind the scenes.
If you could stay one age forever, how old would you stay and why?
Man, being a kid, ignorance is bliss. There's some. I mean, I had a good childhood. Everybody has some hardships, and so did I. But I love how I grew up. But man, again, because everything that motivates me in life in general, and family and friends is fighting. I'm pretty happy being 29 years old. I think I'm the best. I'm right now the best physical specimen I have been. I spent years as a kid training hard to be, a 6 foot tall man, and which you can't train, you just have to wait. I spent a long time trying to become, a deadly weapon and to be big and strong and to be where I wanted, and hopefully that continues to improve. And so I'm pretty happy with my life as it is now. Again, great friends, great family, career's going the way I want it. I'm pretty happy right now.
Celebrity people say you look like?
Steve-O. And people, my wife, I met my wife's best friend at this time. After I won my first amateur title fight, which went almost 15 minutes, it was summertime. We were feeling wild and crazy. I still had my adrenaline rush about a week after the fight, and we were bored, and I dyed my hair blonde because I had never done that. We thought it would be funny. We didn't think it was going to be cool, just so everybody knows. There's probably 5 pictures on the internet of me with that hair. Didn't think I was going to look cool. Wanted to do it, thought it would be funny, and when I did that, everybody called me Eminem. So that would be me as a blonde, Eminem.
Time period you'd like to go back and visit, and why?
Man, these are crushing, these questions. They're very good questions. So, and I'm such a nerd too, so it'd be hard to say. There's been many times. Again, I think it would be great to go back and see, wouldn't it be magnificent if I went to this incredible time where everything was good? Or wouldn't I I'd rather be a billionaire for a week. And I want to see the crazy. I mean, the things that people cannot fathom in life. I think there's several answers. I think it would be crazy to go back to medieval times where, being a fighter, I would have been a guy that had a sword and I was trying to kill a bunch of other dudes with swords. I mean, that would be, not that I want to do that, but like going back to gladiator times and kind of just seeing that culture and things like that, or the Spartan times, because we have it really good right now, but back in the day, man, the society and the culture was so different. It would have been, I'd be very curious to see what it would have been like and what people would have been like, because now, I mean, I can be nice and polite and live in society, but back then, if I was a Spartan warrior or whatever, did I just live in a cave and was super mad? And it would be interesting to go back and kind of to more of a primitive time. And that would probably not very fun, but it would be very interesting to me.
Some people are afraid of spiders. Some people are afraid of heights. Some people are afraid of the dark. What are you afraid of?
Yeah, so all those things that you named, definitely not afraid of. I think a part of my martial arts training and just trying to be a better person in general is to not have any fears. I mean, realistic fears, of course. I'm not afraid of. I've been stood toe to toe with black bears before in the South. I've been on. I've had hypothermia at high elevation. I've had all these kind of things, which that was scary because it was actually potentially a very serious health risk. But what scares me, I guess, and if I had to be scared, it's just, I mean, the well-being of my family and things like that. If something happened to them, that was out of my control, that would be terrible. But as far as bugs, lizards, snakes, spiders, anything that. I kind of weirdly embrace all of that stuff, so I just want my close family and friends to be doing all right.
Person you look up to the most?
Yeah, and that's a really hard question. All of these are great questions. I've said it, I think, before on an interview. It's been a long time. I look up to my parents a lot because they both worked really, really hard for what they have, and they were both successful. My parents got divorced when I was a kid. And they both remarried incredible people, and they did a good job of setting me straight when I got out of line growing up and things like that. And obviously I've known my birth parents a lot longer. Both step parents are incredible, but I know that my parents have worked hard for what they've got, and they're very calm and level headed too. And just successful and driven, and that's where I got my love for probably fighting and that drive.
Is Ben or Break going to become your official nickname?
I think it's kind of already official in the fact, not as a nickname, but more as like a branding.
Sure.
I never had a cool nickname growing up, but we were kind of thinking about my manager was thinking that we need some kind of branding or something that people can recognize you by, and it was my friend Anthony, who I do jiu-jitsu with in his garage every Sunday, no matter what. He was saying one training session, he said, "Wow, he's great at play on words. You could ask this dude. This guy should get paid money for his catchphrases." But he said, "Wow, you do a really good job of bending and not breaking." Mm-hmm. And he goes, "Oh, ha, bend or break." I was like, "Ooh, that's good." And I called my manager right after we were done training. I said, that's what we got, and I don't think it's a good nickname. I think it's a branding thing. It's a kind of like a way, like a saying, because I don't know that I could be Ben or Break Egli, because it's redundant, it sounds like, but the Ben or Break, like my training partner was saying, is bending and not breaking, or bending and not breaking, I think is very important, to be technically sound, but to be stubborn and get what you want, and while you're fighting. I think that's it. Just kind of represents, I think, all like how I go about training and fighting.
Best advice you ever given through life, and best advice you ever given through fighting, and who gave it to you? There's
so many people. I've had so many great instructors and mentors, and wrestling coaches and so too many people have taught me too many good things. What my buddy Spencer, who's been in the corner of most of my fights, is what I tell. What if good advice to anyone? The reason it's good advice is because this is what I have to tell people that don't know how to fight. Like from a self-defense purpose or point of view is if you know that someone's going to try to fight you, and he says this to me all the time, still says it to this day, said it last fight, hands up, chin down. Even if you have no idea how to fight, if you keep your hands up and your chin down, you're going to be better off. And that's obviously very generalized, but if you had to give somebody one tip that didn't know what they were doing, keep your hands up and your chin down. Best advice in life, and again, I think it goes back to my parents. They both said it. They both figured this out too early, which made it, which put pressure on me, but which was a good thing. Both parents and step-parents and sets of step-parents probably did the same thing, but my dad is the one that said it exactly this way, but my mother knew the same, and both step-parents did too, but Ben is better when he's busy and under pressure. Ben performs better when he's busy and under pressure, which is true. And I don't ever have any downtime, really. We're talking hours on a weekend, not days at a time. And, there is a saying out there my buddy and I were just talking about the other day. If you want something to get done, you got to give it to the busiest person, because they'll do it.
What's the best thing that ever happened to you?
Oh, man. I got a lot of gray areas, too. Best thing that's ever happened to me, best thing that involves other people. You got to say, that getting married was one of them. The birth of your son is another one. Those are up there. That's including other people. If I just had to look at it from my own point of view, it would be some kind of martial arts thing related. But yeah, when you get married and when you have a child, it's really like martial arts. You're committing, if you do it right, you're committing yourself, your soul to that forever. So I went from being a martial artist to being a married martial artist, committing my life to my wife forever until we die. And then I have a son, which adds on to the same thing. So I guess just continuing to add complexity to my life and making a vow to continue doing things that aren't very easy. Fighting is not easy. Parenting is not easy. Marriage is not always easy. So just grinding away, I guess, at life.
What's the worst thing that ever happened to you?
Yeah. If you look back on it, if you have like perspective and you think about it, there was some bad times, but now the way that everything is in my life for the most part is pretty great, or as good as it could be. And I would love to, provide even more for my family and create opportunities and things like that. But the worst thing that ever happens to you generally is the thing that when it's in the moment and for however long it lasts after. And thankfully, most wounds don't. If you wait long enough, most wounds do actually go away. So, if the bad stuff that has happened to me has happened, it was for a reason, and I don't know that I could pinpoint it, but nothing has stuck with me long enough. It was very sad or bad at the time, but it is what it is now, I guess.
What's your pet peeve?
Pet peeve, yeah. So what's funny about me, especially if you get to know me, like I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty, happy-go-lucky. I like to make people laugh and joke and stuff like that, and especially if we're not talking about fighting and things like that. But man, do I have a lot of pet peeves. But my biggest pet peeve, just kind of in general, is kind of just kind of the lack of, and it covers so many bases, and that's why I think it's kind of just a little bit of a lack of respect and discipline in general in people's lives. So you don't turn your blinker on, and you slam your brakes on in front of me in the car. Don't like that. You cross the street in front of me without looking both ways. You're not watching your kids as closely as you can. they walk up and punch my kid, stuff like that is just kind of being vigilant and doing, doing your part to make sure that you're doing everything, the best you can, and just being considerate to others around you. The world would be an even better place if everybody just took a little bit of time to kind of be more observant and just be a little bit more disciplined in certain areas of their life. And, if the guy did turn on their blinker, which didn't force the other person to slam on their brakes, we'd have two happier people, So if everybody just kind of did their best to do a little bit better, man, there wouldn't be people with as many pet peeves. So,
what's your hidden talent?
I have a couple, I'd like to think. People are often surprised because me being a CrossFit coach and me being a fighter is, I think people are often surprised by my random trivia, especially animal trivia. Again, because I was going to be a zoology major, but I know quite a bit of a pretty good Jeopardy style trivia for the most part. There are some things that if you asked me to do semi-complex algebra, I'd have no idea how to do it. Tried hard, didn't ever really click with me. But I've got some good random knowledge.
Number one thing on your bucket list?
One of the big ones that I did a couple years ago was skydive. I did that. That was pretty great. Biggest thing on the bucket list, is has been, and it's not been a solid thing that I could necessarily even write down, but is to go as far as I can in fighting. That's the big one up there, is just go as far as I can until I can't. And after fighting is I plan to be the best old man jiu-jitsu guy out there. So when I'm 40 or so, I want to be able to beat any 40-year-old on the planet at jiu-jitsu, and I plan on being able to do that and competing until I die of old age. So that's another one. My wife really wants to go to Europe. I've been 3 times, thankfully. Very lucky to have been able to do that. I'd love to take her out there and my son, and Australia's on the bucket list as well, again, because of animals and all the other weird stuff that I'm nerdy about. So, got to get a big trip in there somewhere.
Ben, last question. If you could change one thing about the world, what would you change and why?
I mean, kind of maybe if you elaborate more on what I said about pet peeves, if everybody was just a little bit kinder to everybody else, and, there's a lot of selfishness. And again, there's not anyone that isn't a little bit selfish, and like I mentioned earlier, that fighting is a very selfish sport, and it has to be. And if I had to change something about the world, you can't just say world peace or this and that, because there's always going to be bad people out there all the time. But if people were just more disciplined in general, I think, there's a lot of areas where I could be more disciplined, but if people just really worked hard to kind of better themselves every day and help the people that are around them, had we started doing that about 200 years ago, we'd probably be better off.
Ben, real quick before I let you go, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank, and is there anything you want to say to the fans?
Yeah, well, like I said, I can't speak to it enough about the fans. The support has been amazing. You guys got to follow this fight. Every fight is the biggest fight of your life, and this is certainly going to be that way. There's another person standing in my way, and I plan to win. And after that, we're looking to keep improving and I mean just keep things rolling. So August 5th, look out for that fight. Please, if you're a fan of mine, if you like anything that I've said or done today on this interview, please check me out on YouTube. Just Google my name, Ben Egli, E-G-L-I. I put out at least one video a week. That's been my vow for a long time. The stuff really does work. So sponsors, got a lot of great ones. The Buckman Public House, buddy of mine's restaurant who does jiu-jitsu with me, DSS Corporation, Tiger Wind Supply, Max Muscle Nutrition in Tualatin, Tiger CrossFit PAW where I work, Gracie Technics, of course, Burt Camp, Boone's Ferry Chiropractic and Massage, Polar Therapeutics, Threat Dynamics in Sherwood, the Civic Tap Room, Lana's Egg Whites. There's probably one or two more on there, but really we've put together the past few fights an incredible group of sponsors that actually care about me, support me, and I've support them and had supported them before they supported me. So really appreciate it.
Ben, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it. Good luck August 5th at King of the Cage Fractured against Tyson Jeffries.
Thank you so much. I was glad to talk with you.